My name is Laura, and I have dedicated nearly 12 years to serving as an assistant principal at Rose Hill High. One might assume that after spending over 10 years in a single location, the very walls would evoke a sense of familiarity. The corridors. The chime of bells echoed through the air. The weary faculty lounge marked by its sputtering vending machine and the acrid scent of burnt coffee. Yet recently, even that sense of familiarity has begun to feel strangely alien. It felt as though I was merely wandering through a life that no longer felt like my own. Within the confines of our home, the vibrancy of my marriage had faded into a muted exchange of courteous silence. 2 adult children away at university. A spouse who cherished the tranquility of weekend gardening over the intimacy of shared glances. I had reached the age of 53. I was okay. That's the story I shared with everyone. It was a Tuesday afternoon, caught in the limbo between detentions and discipline forms, when my heel gave way on the back stairwell. No one witnessed it, or so I believed. I remained on the frigid linoleum, grasping my ankle, my blouse adhering to the perspiration on my back, too mortified to shift, too weary to mind. Suddenly a voice reached my ears. Gentle, unrefined and raw. Is everything all right? I raised my gaze. It was indeed him, the custodian. He was cleaning a locker handle nearby, blending into the background as always, a figure I had likely brushed past countless times yet never truly acknowledged. His eyes radiated kindness, not particularly striking in appearance, worn by time, genuine, more aged than I anticipated, perhaps in the late 50s, perhaps even more. He possessed a certain stillness, as if the weight of his entire existence rested upon his shoulders. I'm fine, I replied, dismissing it with a wave of my hand, merely an unfortunate pair of shoes and an exhausting day. He remained silent. He refrained from making a joke. He knelt next to me and reached out his hand. Allow me to assist. His hand was warm, hardened, soft and soothing, and in that unassuming moment, neither a playful tease nor a sweeping display, merely an act of kindness, something within me began to yield. Something I didn't realize had been clenched for years. He assisted me in rising to my feet. I appreciate it, I murmured. He gave a slight nod. You consistently find yourself as the final arrival. Are you truly all right? The question lingered in my mind long after I had hobbled back to my office. How are you holding up? Not, what's the status of enrollment? Not, have you given the green light to the new schedule? Not, what's on the menu for this evening? But are you all right? No one had asked me that in a long time. I chose not to respond to him at that moment. Not quite. Yet I would. In due course. For when an individual catches a glimpse of you in a realm where you faded from sight, the gaze they cast lingers in your memory. It began to occur with increasing frequency after that. Small details. Insignificant nuances that would hold no significance for anyone else. The trash in my office was consistently emptied, even during those late hours I spent working alone. The flickering light above the stairwell has finally been replaced. A cup of chamomile tea rests on my desk, still warm, yet devoid of any note. Initially, I believed it to be mere chance. Perhaps it's simply a matter of fortunate timing. However, I began to observe something different. He was perpetually present, not in an intrusive manner, not immediately clear, yet simply lingering. As I sat alone within the confines of the faculty room, a stack of detention reports before me, the sound of a broom sweeping the hallway echoed softly in the background. As I mopped the gym floor, the very hour stretched on, a lingering echo of the student council meeting still fresh in my mind. Silently poised in the courtyard as I stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. It was only on a late Thursday evening, close to 8 p.m., that I came to terms with it. The halls were empty. I had been diligently preparing the disciplinary log for the upcoming month. My mind was a whirlwind of figures, annotations, and self-imposed reminders that I was certain would never see the light of day again. I reclined in my chair, shutting my eyes. Then I caught the sound, the gentle creak of the mop bucket wheels gliding past. I slowly opened my eyes. He lingered just outside my office door. Our gazes intertwined. He offered a subtle nod. Not arrogant. Merely a quiet acknowledgement of your presence. I can't quite fathom why those words escaped my lips. Is it common for you to be here this late? He wore a smile. Do you? A chuckle escaped my lips. Silently. A laugh that escapes when something strikes a chord within you. It seems we're both uncertain about when to call it a night, I remarked. His smile transformed into a more somber expression. At times, the place we call home can feel anything but familiar. The words lingered in the air between us, heavy and unyielding. He offered no further details. I refrained from pressing. Yet, within that single sentence, understanding dawned upon me. We were more than merely two individuals burning the midnight oil. We existed as two souls concealed amidst the ordinary, unnoticed by the world around us. Two individuals whose residences had transformed into spaces of evasion. The overhead lights in the school emitted a low, persistent buzz. The sky outside had succumbed to darkness. Would you care for some tea? I inquired. He blinked, taken aback. I wish to respect your space. You are not. I'm uncertain about what compelled me, to extend, to beckon, to unveil. Yet, deep down, I felt an undeniable urge to ensure that the night would not conclude in silence once more. Thus we found ourselves seated. Two paper vessels. Several uncomfortable moments. And then, comfort. He revealed to me that his name was Jack. He had dedicated 5 years to this place. He once made a living by fixing things, but now he primarily finds himself tidying up the chaos left by others. I confided in him that there was a time when I truly cherished this job. Recently, I found myself feeling more like an arbiter than a guide. And for the first time in what feels like months, perhaps even years, I felt a sense of companionship. The week had unfolded with an unexpected warmth, a rarity for October. The sort of arid warmth that renders everything taut, emotions, tolerance, and even the atmosphere surrounding individuals. The students buzzed with restlessness, the teachers wielded their sharpness like a blade, and by day's end, I found myself drained in a manner that transcended mere physical fatigue. At approximately 4 o'clock, the clouds began to gather ominously. By 6, the heavens split apart as if a long-held tension had finally given way. The rumble of thunder reverberated through the campus, shaking the window panes with its force. A tempest that rendered you insignificant, regardless of your height or the illusion of control you believed you possessed. I remained in my office as the power flickered momentarily. Twice. Then it vanished entirely. The stillness was peculiar. Absent were the soft hum of lights and the faint murmur of conversation, replaced instead by the relentless beat of rain drumming on the roof. And then came a knock. Jack lingered in the doorway, flashlight gripped tightly, his shirt clinging to his shoulders with dampness. He resembled a character from a story, composed, unwavering, and just a touch disheveled. Are you all right? He inquired. Once more that question arises. That question lingers, ever present. I'm fine, I replied, my smile trembling at the corners, merely biding my time until the rain subsides. It will not, he stated. The forecast indicates it will linger throughout the night. I cast my gaze beyond the window pane. My car rested in a puddle that resembled a small pond. I envisioned myself drenched, heels faltering, blouse adhering, the poignant farce of a woman attempting to flee a life one step at a time, only to find herself soaked in the parking lot. Jack must have noticed the fleeting thought flicker across my expression. Allow me to drive you, he offered. I've got the truck parked by the side gate. Large tires. She will prevail. For a brief moment I paused. Not due to a lack of trust in him. Yet I did. And that, in some inexplicable way, was far more terrifying. Nevertheless, I nodded. Allow me a moment to retrieve my bag. The journey began in silence. The interior of his truck radiated warmth, infused with a subtle aroma of cedar intertwined with hints of coffee grounds and the freshness of rain. He refrained from engaging in casual conversation. I navigated the road, taking my time and being mindful of every turn. Yet I sensed it, that gentle resonance that lingered in the space between us. Free of tension. Not a mere flirtation. Something softer. Something intriguing. As I made my way home, I encountered a fallen tree blocking the road ahead. The detour led us on a lengthy journey, through serpentine back streets that had long faded from my memory. As we arrived at my house, the rain had softened into a gentle mist. He brought the vehicle to a stop, shut down the engine, yet remained still. I didn't either. I appreciate it, I murmured gently. For taking the wheel. He inclined his head, gaze fixed on the glass before him. At any moment. I ought to have opened the door. One ought to have departed. Instead, I inquired, do you ever sense that you're unseen, Jack? He pivoted then, truly transformed. His voice carried a hushed timbre. Each day. It wasn't until our paths crossed that everything changed. My breath hitched. It wasn't the words themselves, but the manner in which he uttered them, as if he had no intention of winning my admiration, simply speaking the truth. Lightning flashed in the far-off sky, now muted and contained behind the barrier of glass. I refrained from kissing him. That night was different. Yet an event unfolded within that truck. A transformation. A fleeting instant caught between the familiar existence I had always embraced and a yearning for something I had never dared to desire until this very moment. As I emerged into the shrouded mist and made my way toward the dwelling I was meant to consider home, an unusual weight seemed to anchor my legs, making each step feel more burdensome than the last. For the first time in years, I was reluctant to step inside. In the wake of the rainstorm, I found myself lingering longer. It wasn't due to an increase in my workload. If anything, it was quite the opposite. Yet the silence seemed transformed in this moment. Never alone. Lightweight. Welcoming. I convinced myself it was all about efficiency. How much clearer my thoughts flowed in the stillness of vacant halls. The emails could certainly hold off until the sun dipped below the horizon. Yet the reality? I found myself in a state of anticipation, awaiting his arrival. Jack remained silent on the matter. He never questioned my presence in the office at 6:45, nor did he inquire about my unexpected visit to the gym during his final round, or my newfound interest in the flickering lights of the library. He simply observed. Each and every time. Each time he appeared, offering a steaming cup of tea, a quiet nod, or a question that felt gentler than anything I encountered at home. On a particular night, I discovered him in the auditorium. He was tinkering with a stubborn curtain pulley, the stage bathed in a soft amber glow from the overhead lights. You resemble a stagehand, I teased, moving in closer. From his perch on the ladder, he cast a glance my way, a smile gracing his lips. You might be astonished by the skills I've had to acquire to make things right in this place. I remained in the front row, arms crossed, observing his movements, deliberate, skilled, and calm. It possessed an almost tranquil quality. I used to visit this place in my youth, I confessed. Prior to my marriage. The stillness of an unoccupied theater captivated me. It seemed as though you could embody anyone, if only for a fleeting moment. He cast his gaze in my direction then, truly examined. Pray tell, who might you be? He inquired. I found myself at a loss for words. Not at that moment. Not at this moment. He descended the ladder with deliberate care, his hands being wiped clean on a rag. He approached the brink of the stage and in silence extended his hand, as if it were a signal. It felt as though destiny had orchestrated my presence beneath that glow. Alongside him. I certainly did. With a firm grip on his hand, I stepped onto the stage. We refrained from dancing. Our lips never met. Not a word was exchanged between us. We lingered in that moment, two silhouettes amidst vacant chairs, embracing the stillness of uncelebrated lives. He was the one to release his grip first. Not out of desire. Yet we were acutely aware of the gravity of what lay ahead, still unfulfilled. As I departed that evening, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror of the front office, and I beheld it reflected in my own visage. A sudden rush of color, a gentle tenderness, a glimmer of a memory long forgotten. It is not love, not at this moment, yet something hauntingly near. It was the beginning of the week. Nothing out of the ordinary, the same old coffee lingering in the break room, the same pile of paperwork waiting for me on my desk upon arrival, the same weary bell tones reverberating through the corridors. Yet there was an unsettling feeling in the air. Initially, I found it difficult to identify. The floors bore the marks of wear, and the trash cans remained unemptied. The corridor beyond the guidance office carried a subtle hint of bleach, a stark contrast to the familiar, inviting citrus aroma that Jack typically infused into the air. As the clock struck noon, I approached the front desk with my inquiry. "Is Jack not here today?" The secretary looked at me with wide eyes. "Jack, the custodian," I remarked, attempting to maintain a nonchalant demeanor. "The gentleman who is on duty during the evenings?" "Ah, indeed. Seems he made a call. I heard there's been a family emergency." She returned to her typing, and I returned to the facade of not having just sensed something glide beneath my skin. It was utterly absurd, I reminded myself. He was merely the janitor, merely an individual who polished the floors, tidied the gymnasium, and replaced the light bulbs above my office entrance. Yet, as the clock struck 4 p.m., an emptiness enveloped the school. It's peculiar how we become aware of certain things only in their absence. The soft jingle of his keys as he strolled along, the gentle whisper of the mop gliding across the floor. He knocked softly before stepping inside, even though the door was ajar. And then there lay a void within me. I lingered into the night regardless, remained in my office long after the last of my colleagues had departed. I found myself gazing at my phone repeatedly. No message. Unnamed. As I switched off the lights and made my way through the shadowy corridors toward the exit, I hesitated for a moment outside the supply closet, he perpetually left slightly open. The door was secured tight. I lingered in that spot for what felt like an eternity, more time than I ought to have taken, as if the outline of him still lived in that space. With the dawn of a new day, he returned once more. I caught sight of him in the courtyard, diligently washing the sidewalk where a splash of paint had marred its surface. I called out, even though his back was turned to me. "Greetings, Jack." He pivoted. The expression on his face conveyed everything: astonishment, affection, and an underlying caution. "Are you all right?" I inquired. He nodded, dabbing at his brow with a towel. "Indeed. I simply needed to attend to a matter. I didn't inquire about what he didn't offer. But the way I exhaled told him everything." He cast a glance my way, lingering for just a heartbeat. Silently, with unwavering focus. And then he uttered it, nearly a whisper. "You realize my absence." I averted my gaze, my heart racing. Naturally, I did. He wore a smile. Narrow. Not arrogant. Simply gentle. In that moment, clarity washed over me. This transcended mere long days and late nights. This was not a matter of fleeing. It revolved around being there. And how I had come to yearn for his, more than I would ever confess openly. On that particular Friday, the air was brisk and heavy with clouds, a day that felt alive with energy as the children buzzed with excitement, while the teachers seemed to be drifting towards the promise of the weekend. I lingered after the final bell, naturally. An incident unfolded involving 2 freshmen, a parent meeting that eluded my attempts to reschedule, and a to-do list that seemed destined to remain unfinished. As I finally stepped out of my office, I noticed the sun beginning its descent, casting a warm glow across the horizon. As I made my way to the supply closet, clutching a stack of confiscated materials, my heel snagged on the edge of a loose tile, the very one Jack had pointed out last week, yet had not found the time to fix. I fell with great force. My shoulder crashed against the wall. The folders tumbled to the ground. I winced as a sharp pain shot through my wrist, the result of an awkward landing. Then, a profound stillness enveloped the air. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the silence. Swift. Jack rounded the corner, his brow furrowed, eyes searching until they landed on me sprawled on the ground. "Laura." He sank to his knees beside me, his hand already extending toward my wrist. "I'm okay," I began to say, yet my voice trembled. His hands, rough yet tender, cradled mine, scrutinizing the swelling that had already started to form. "No, you're not," he murmured softly. He remained silent, without a moment's pause. He lifted me to my feet, one arm supporting my back, the other gently cradling my hand as if it were fragile porcelain. "Ice is essential." He failed to escort me to the nurse's office. There was no offer to reach out to anyone else. He led me into his domain, the janitor's room nestled behind the boiler corridor, a place I had never ventured before. The air was imbued with a gentle warmth, surprisingly so. A confined area, pristine, meticulously arranged, a radio perched on a shelf, a weathered thermos, a modest chair nestled next to a workbench, aged beautifully in all the right spots. He settled me into my seat as if I were something delicate, acquired a bag of ice, enveloped it in a towel. He pressed it to my wrist himself. I observed him closely. It's not merely the actions he took, but the manner in which he executed them, with great care, as if I held significance. At last, when he raised his gaze, our eyes locked in a silent exchange. Then silence enveloped the scene, not the atmosphere. Leave the lights alone. As an unsettling wave washed over me, I realized with dread that if he dared to inch closer, I would be powerless to intervene. His fingers glided over my skin, not intentionally, yet sufficient to imprint a mark. And then he uttered those words. Subdued. Just a whisper of existence. I can no longer maintain the facade that this is insignificant. I took a deep breath. I couldn't either. Yet, I found myself unprepared to voice it aloud. In a soft murmur I expressed my gratitude, saying, "Thank you for your presence here." He gave a single nod. Yet the quiet that lingered between us had transformed, no longer devoid of meaning. It brimmed with all the unuttered thoughts we had yet to confront. In that small space, with an ice pack resting against my wrist and the intensity of his gaze locked onto me, I sensed that a shift had occurred. Not due to the events that transpired, yet due to the precipice we nearly approached. The weekend arrived, yet it lacked the familiar essence of leisure. I moved through the day's tasks, the grocery store, laundry, dinner with my husband, where we faced each other like colleagues who had lost touch with the purpose of their partnership. He inquired about the condition of my wrist. I inclined my head in agreement. He didn't inquire about the way I had wounded it. I withheld the truth. Yet, in the depths of my thoughts, I found myself repeatedly drawn back to that room. The gaze. His voice resonated through the air. I can no longer maintain the facade that this is insignificant. I couldn't either. As Monday approached, a sense of restlessness began to take hold of me. I slipped into a gentle blue blouse that had remained untouched for months, a garment that made my skin feel acknowledged, even if just by my own awareness. As I entered the building, I had no intention of searching for him. Yet, I sensed his presence long before his figure came into view. He moved down the hall, a cart in tow, his gaze fixed on the floor until he felt my presence. As our gazes locked, an unspoken connection surged between us. A gentle tenderness, a palpable tension, a comprehension that transcends the limits of language. Silence enveloped him, words unspoken. He nodded, slowly and deliberately, as if a question lingered unspoken in the air. Once more, I found myself lingering into the late hours of the night, long after the buses had departed, long after the other educators had retreated to their serene kitchens and weary unions. His arrival went unnoticed by me. He was remarkably quiet. Yet, as I pivoted, he stood before me, at the threshold, with his hands tucked away in his pockets. Focus your gaze upon me. Silence enveloped us. I rose to my feet, strolled in his direction, unhurried, uncertain. I halted, mere inches separating us. The atmosphere surrounding us shimmered with unspoken tension. I glanced upward, murmuring, "Jack." He raised his hand, unhurried. "I have no appetite." His fingers brushed against my cheek. Only a single palm. Just a heartbeat longer than he ought to have. And my entire being contorted into that expression. It had been ages since anyone had laid a hand on me in such a way. Do not take. Not to guide. Yet to behold. With my eyes shut tight, I surrendered to the darkness. Then he pressed his lips against mine. It lacked urgency. It unfolded at a measured pace. It was filled with deep respect. The kiss conveyed a depth of longing, a silent acknowledgement of the time spent yearning to connect with someone who truly understands me. His arms enveloped me, embodying both inquiry and resolution in a single embrace. As we finally broke apart, an unspoken understanding lingered between us, and neither of us uttered a word of regret. We remained motionless, our breaths caught, cradling the truth within our quietude. Free from blame. No shame. The chilling comfort of being embraced by someone who understood your pain and remained unyielding. In the aftermath of the kiss, silence enveloped us for 3 long days. It wasn't due to any desire to evade one another. Yet we found ourselves at a loss, unable to retrace our steps to the way things once were. How do you feign ignorance of a boundary that you have willingly crossed? The school persisted in its familiar rhythm, students darting between classes, teachers expressing their frustrations in the lounge, and the hallway buzz merging into a cacophony. Yet we had changed. And I sensed it, in the way my heart faltered at the sound of his keys jingling, in how my body tightened as I walked by the boiler room door. We had traversed a threshold, and now we resided within it. On Wednesday afternoon, I lingered longer than I typically do. Once more. The sun was starting its languid descent toward the horizon, casting golden streaks across the windows of the math wing. Jack stood present. He remained silent as I drew near. We had moved beyond the need for permission. He extended his hand toward me, and I allowed him to draw me into the dimness of the stairwell, the one adjacent to the forgotten drama classroom that had long been abandoned. This time his kiss held a distinct quality, more ravenous. It was as if the act of restraint had morphed into a torment of its own. And I kissed him back as if the world beyond this moment held no significance. Yet in that moment a sound emerged. Echoes of footsteps. Remote. Almost there. We stood still, pressed against the wall, inhaling deeply as if harboring secrets too vast for their youthful frames. I glanced through the glass, merely a student strolling by, earbuds in, oblivious to the world around them. Yet it held no significance. For in that instant, that surge of fear, I was brought face to face with reality. We had become visible at last. With visibility, there inevitably follows consequence. I took a step back. His hands dropped to his sides. I cannot. I started. He inclined his head in agreement. I understand. Yet the pain reflected in his gaze conveyed a deeper truth. We were not acting with negligence. Our caution arrived just moments too late. And still I felt no regret. For a woman who had existed in the shadows for years, even a single stolen kiss in the wrong hallway held more value than a lifetime steeped in silence. It began in the way that many whispers do. Petite. Disregardable. A chuckle echoed through the staff room. Peculiar look at the copier. A sentence that concluded with an ellipsis. Did you catch a glimpse of her with the janitor? I caught a snippet of conversation just outside the break room. Two novice educators engaged in hushed conversation. My name went unspoken. There was no obligation for them to do so. The abrupt stillness enveloped me as I stepped inside. The courteous grins that pulled taut at the edges. Their gaze upon me was not one of judgment, but rather filled with a sense of intrigue. It possesses a quality akin to that of a microscope. I reassured myself that it was insignificant, that it would come to an end, that they had erred, that I might lift my chin with pride. Yet that afternoon, I stumbled upon Jack diligently cleaning the cafeteria tables as if it were just another ordinary Tuesday. Yet it was not the case. He remained focused, not lifting his gaze as I drew near. Jack. His jaw tightened. His hands quickened their pace slightly. His gaze remained fixed on the table. You heard, I murmured softly. He gave a single nod. It's of no concern to me, he murmured. I've endured harsher words directed at me. Yet it holds significance for me. At last he raised his gaze. In his eyes there lingered a depth I had never encountered before. Not softness. Not warmth. Departure. I told you, he remarked. I aimed to avoid complicating matters for you. You really didn't, I replied. The world has spoken. And then in a gentler tone, we did. In that resonant cafeteria we found ourselves two adults, submerged in the weight of unvoiced shame that lingered between us. The distant chime of the school bell echoed through the air. Yet neither of us made a single move. I longed to reach out and grasp his hand, to seize it, to ensure he understood that this was not a mere error to be forgotten. Yet I found myself unable to do so. Absent from this place. That is no longer the case. Perhaps it's time to pause, I murmured. The words lingered on the tongue like a bitter residue. He gave a slight nod. Yet he remained unconvinced. His silence echoed the truth I had long understood. Ceasing would not erase any sensations. The memory of his hand against my face would linger, untouched by time. I wouldn't take back the way I had started to construct a universe around him, in hidden chambers of my spirit where my husband had never ventured. I never intended to cause you pain, I said. He smiled, that gentle fractured smile of a man well acquainted with the intricacies of suffering. You did not. You have awakened a sensation within me that I thought was lost. I walked away, leaving him behind, isolated, as he had always been. Yet that evening, as I lay in bed beside a man who hadn't inquired about my well-being for weeks, Jack occupied my thoughts incessantly, and how the sole thing more dreadful than being observed was opting to vanish once more. It had been a week since I last laid eyes on him, not within the confines of the cafeteria, not within the corridors, not even in those late hours when I once sought solace in his silent presence. It felt as though Jack had disappeared, retreating into the shadows of a reality that never genuinely embraced his presence. And in some inexplicable way, I found myself swept along with it. Within the confines of our home, my husband remained oblivious to my silence. I ceased to inquire about his day. I ceased to concern myself with folding the laundry any longer. We lingered like ethereal shadows, occupying the same kitchen, gliding past one another in the hallway without contact, without warmth. On the 8th day, I strolled through the gym, the echoes of a faculty meeting still lingering in my mind. He was present, isolated, polishing the scuffed court floor as if it were the sole purpose of existence. I lingered in the doorway, observing him for what felt like an eternity. At first he failed to notice my presence. Yet he sensed my presence. I am aware that he did. As his movements gradually decelerated, and ultimately came to a halt, as he finally pivoted, his gaze conveyed a world of unspoken truths. You've returned. I approached him, my heart racing in my chest. What caused your sudden absence? I inquired. I did not, he replied. I simply allowed you the freedom to let me slip from your memory. I gently shook my head. Yet I did not. I was unable to. He gulped. Challenging. I truly meant every word, Laura. I never intended to complicate your life. Yet you chose not to, I remarked. You brought it to life. We lingered in that moment, two souls who had endeavored to tread lightly, and stumbled instead. Yet within that failure, a certain beauty had emerged. I can no longer feign a version of myself that isn't true, I murmured. Jack's gaze remained locked onto mine. Pray tell, who might you be? I inhaled deeply. May the truth resonate within me. I am a woman who lingered in an unsuitable marriage for far too long. She had persuaded herself that feeling nothing was a safer choice than yearning for something more. She convinced herself of her strength, believing she required nothing, until someone finally noticed her. And in that moment, she understood just how deeply she craved connection. He remained silent, offering no verbal response. He advanced with purpose, seized my hand, and this time I remained steadfast. We refrained from making promises. There was no discussion about what lies ahead. What followed was not cloaked in romance. We made the choice to be with one another. And that sufficed. Under the cover of darkness, I carefully assembled a bag. I shared the truth with my husband, not every detail, but certainly enough to convey the essence. He remained stoic. He remained silent. He simply remarked, I always knew you were lonely. I departed. Not suitable for Jack. However, for my part, Jack sat patiently in the worn-out truck, a familiar sight outside. I ascended within. He extended his arm over the seat, grasping my hand with a touch that was both rugged and comforting, and uttered the singular truth that held all significance. Is everything all right? This time I responded to him with complete honesty. I exist in this moment.